For the first time in our history, we will strike all three of the big three at once.
A new lithium deposit in northern Nevada may be the largest in the world.
Right now, MGM resorts across the nation are under a massive cyber attack.
And if we need to go all out, we will. Everything is on the table.
Legislation to advance marijuana reform at the federal level is expected soon to take a historic step forward. That's thanks to major buy-in from Republicans in the Senate. So we're talking about the bipartisan effort here. Why is this legislation getting some key support from some Republican senators?
Well, remember, 40 states and the District of Columbia have legalized some form of use of marijuana.
Right now, PG&E is in deliberations with the State Public Utilities Commission, requesting $3.2 billion more than it received in its budgeting all of last year. But this week, the commission fired back with just half of what they're requesting. PG&E says the proposals, quote, fall short in funding critical wildfire mitigation.
This is a resounding victory for the suspended Attorney General, who will now presumably be placed back into office. Ken Paxton has survived 16 votes on articles of impeachment. Really resoundingly, there were only 2 Republicans who at any point voted to impeach their fellow Republican Attorney General. So rather overwhelming support for Ken Paxton in this impeachment trial.
A state of emergency declared in Leominster, with dangerous flooding engulfing the city Monday night.
This is in Massachusetts. Look at this flash flooding emergency issued for a period of time. The flood alerts are going to continue into early this afternoon. The radar at one point was estimating rainfall rates of 7.9 inches per hour over this area, which has led to the streets turning into wide rivers.
School canceled for all students on Tuesday, with many concerned about what the rest of the week will look like.
Police upping the reward for anyone who may know where this man, Danilo Cavalcante, is right now, adding
his sister, who lives in this area, has been arrested by ICE and is in deportation proceedings, according to Pennsylvania State Police. We learned a little bit more from them about that. Apparently, apparently she had not been cooperating with the investigation. They will not say whether or not she offered him any kind of assistance, but they say that she was not helping with the investigation, so that could explain why ICE is a little bit more aggressive, it sounds like, in arresting her and putting her into deportation proceedings.
Authorities say officers cornered Cavalcante in South Coventry Township. A DEA plane with thermal imaging detecting heat signals around 1 a.m., about an hour after a home burglary alarm was triggered nearby.
Heat signature on the north side of the wood line, going into the woods.
Tactical units quickly converging on that area, a lightning storm, then forcing that DEA plane to leave.
Use caution, they're trying to push the heat signature towards you.
Law enforcement forming a tight perimeter until sunrise.
34 cops in combat gear with 2 canines involved in the hunt posed for a class photo. There's Cavalcante in the center, like a trophy.
Following the city council meeting, the city has decided to fire Chief of Police Portillo and deactivate the Coffee City Police Force.
We just felt it was in the best interest of us to deactivate the department until we are able to get new leadership.
This decision to fire the chief came after an independent investigation conducted by the city confirmed the DWI allegation against John J. Portillo. The former chief did not disclose that charge on his job application. Coffee City is a town with a population of 250 people. Records show the police department had 50 officers on staff. Mayor Jeff Blackstone says the council decided to deactivate the entire police force instead of pursuing individual investigations. Meantime, the Henderson County Sheriff's Department will assist on 911 calls.
We're going to answer the calls in order of priority. The most severe is going to be the quickest.
Mayor Blackstone adds that with the decisions made today, there's no need to continue investigating the police department. The focus is now on rebuilding the reputation of small-town Coffee City.
Really just at the tip of the iceberg for drones and the drone programs. It's expanding not only for our department, but within the county itself. And we can have all these cooperative efforts throughout the entire county, and even regionally. If we needed to send somebody to assist in Onondaga County or another adjacent county, we would be willing to do that.
The tech also giving the fire department another eye and angle.
The drone has thermal imaging where you can see the heat sources. You can see where the fire is going. You can see where it's needs to be extinguished.
Not only is this technology a great resource for both police and fire departments, it's great for overall public safety, can go up to 400 feet in the air, but can zoom in up to 200 times its normal image.
Dozens of people filing off 3 buses in San Diego, the majority adult men, carrying a backpack of belongings with documents in hand. The group released by Customs and Border Patrol at a local transit center to figure out the next steps in their journey.
There's no problem if I go to Chicago.
CBP calling the drop-offs standard procedure. The drop-offs a way to alleviate crowding at the crossings. But the DHS Office of Inspector General, an internal watchdog group, found that during a 17-month stretch, 177,000 address records for migrants processed and released into the U.S. were blank or did not contain legitimate locations. CBP explaining that migrants are released near transit centers when non-governmental aid groups are at capacity and after consulting with local governments.
The Ped West border crossing, and it's an area that people who live and work on both sides of the border routinely use to get across. It's a pedestrian crossing. It is temporarily closing because Customs and Border Protection says there has been such an increase in human smuggling that there are a lot of migrants now at that section of the border, and there are not a lot of resources.
Oakland police are not providing the I-team with any specific data, but DeLapp says over the past few months, pirates have been attacking vessels at 5 different locations along the channel, including Jack London Square, the Jack London Aquatic Center, the Estuary Channel west of the Bayside Hotel, Union Point Park West, and Union Point Park East.
I counted at least 7 vessels either abandoned or sunk here at Union Point Park.
This order is frankly a distraction that is going to divide people. It is not going to be upheld as constitutional under close scrutiny.
A strong message today from the state's top attorney as more people speak out against the governor's controversial health order barring people from carrying guns in public in Bernalillo County. In a letter today to the governor, Attorney General Raul Torres says he will not defend the order against the flurry of lawsuits being filed to block it.
But fundamentally, I don't think it passes constitutional muster and is likely to be struck down by one of the judges who are set to hear these cases.
The Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office will not enforce this segment of the order. While I understand the urgency, the temporary ban challenges the foundations of our Constitution, but most importantly, it is unconstitutional.
And it's not for police to tell me what's constitutional or not. They haven't supported not one gun violence effort in the state of New Mexico, including domestic violence protections, universal background checks. And I know you want to ask me a question, so I'll take a breath, but these are NRA talking points about their rights and not about anybody else's. And it's not a ban. It's a temporary pause so that we can make this community safer.
Do you really think that criminals are going to hear this message and not carry a gun in Albuquerque on the streets for 30 days?
No.
You said no. Are you going to keep doing this? 30 days, take it up to the Supreme Court? Or is this about a statement right now?
The judge's ruling halts Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's 30-day suspension, barring private citizens from carrying firearms on public property in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, where violent crime rates are especially high.
This divide doesn't fall along traditional party lines. Many of the most public critics were Democrats. I spoke with the governor's office just moments ago. They plan to be back here in court on October 3rd.
Susanna Gibson, running for a key seat in a high-stakes race, allegedly performed sexual acts that were published live on a platform called Chatterbait.
The outlet was alerted by a Republican operative. In a statement to the Post, Gibson appears to take umbrage with Republicans, writing in the expose, quote, "An illegal invasion of my privacy designed to humiliate me and my family. It won't intimidate me and it won't silence me. My political opponents and their Republican allies have proven they're willing to commit a sex crime to attack me and my family because there's no line they won't cross." Though the videos are no longer available, over a dozen were archived and have been uploaded to other sites. It is unclear when the videos were taken, but 2 were archived September 30th, 2022, after she kicked off her bid for the Richmond District House seat.
I do think it's interesting, sort of putting aside the question of whether or not this is anything to be ashamed of or not. Does she have the right to claim that this is revenge porn when this was something that she was producing and putting out and selling live on the internet?
All right, you are less than an hour away now as workers at Hormel finishing up voting on a new work contract. The workers in Austin are demanding better pay following record company profits. Union leaders are advising workers to vote no and prepare to strike, saying the current offer does not meet their standards. Results are expected early tomorrow.
This week, Drew Barrymore announcing she has restarted her daytime talk show, even as striking writers and actors protest outside her studio.
Seeking a modernized pay structure, staffing guarantees, limits on artificial intelligence. Today, they fill the shut-down streets of Hollywood en route from Netflix to Paramount.
With the writers' strike in its 5th month and the SAG-AFTRA strike in its 3rd, there is concern over how long support will last amid a stalemate in negotiations.
For the first time in our history, we will strike all 3 of the big 3 at once. And if we need to go all out, we will. Everything is on the table.
The union had been calling for a 40% raise over the next 4 years. They also want a boost to their pension, plus the end of temporary employees, but the two sides could not reach an agreement.
This is part of what they're calling a stand-up picket, a unique style being employed by the union where they are just having divisions of plants in certain areas walk out. So you'll still see union members crossing the picket line here to go to work inside this plant, something we haven't seen in the past. The idea, according to union management, is to keep the automakers confused and uncertain about what may come next. And as you just heard from the president, they say they are willing and do plan to expand this strike as this continues to go further and further.
One of the things about the plants that were chosen is that these are not plants that have high volume sales. In other words, they didn't go after the big ones that are the big selling high profit stuff like the F-150 or the Sierra or the Ram truck. They didn't do that.
United Auto Workers are pushing for big changes, including a substantial wage hike of 30% over 4 years, eliminating wage tiers which pay very different rates per hour, a shortened 32-hour work week while keeping pay at a 40-hour level, and union representation at 10 electric vehicle factories. But the big 3 automakers, GM, Ford, and Stellantis, say the costly transition to electric vehicles makes it too difficult to meet these demands.
Now we got breaking news related to that United Auto Workers strike.
Ford has just announced that it is laying off approximately 600 workers at its Michigan assembly plant. That is the plant where one of the UAW strikes is taking place. We should point out that that strike does not shut down the entire plant. There is still body construction and stamping work that is going on there. But because those employees need some of the parts that the UAW works with and provides to the stamping operation and the body construction operation, and they cannot do that, Ford says it has no choice but to tell those workers they are now laid off.
Schroyer didn't go into the Capitol building during the riot, but prosecutors argued that by spreading conspiracy theories in 2020 election denial claims online and on his show, The War Room with Owen Schroyer, he helped fuel an environment that resulted in the insurrection. He received a misdemeanor charge of entering or remaining on restricted grounds.
Yeah, so I'm a little confused by this, to be honest. So they're saying he did not go into the Capitol, but the charge was entering staying on restricted grounds. So I guess that means some outdoor area of the Capitol that they technically weren't supposed to be on. Bombshell whistleblower revelations on the origins of COVID-19 have come in, and it is not looking good for the natural origins crowd. New reporting alleges that the CIA offered to pay off analysts in hopes of burying their findings that COVID-19 was likely leaked from a lab. Wow. Tuesday, the House Coronavirus Subcommittee and the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence notified the CIA Director, William Burns, of these startling allegations. According to a high-level CIA officer, 6 officers of the CIA were given a, quote, significant monetary incentive to change their position on the origins of the virus.
The committees have set a September 26th deadline for the CIA to turn over all records regarding the establishment of COVID-19 discovery teams. They've also asked the former chief operating officer at the agency, Andrew McCridis, to participate in a voluntary transcribed interview.
Members of the jury, have you reached your verdict?
Yes.
And as to William Null, count 1, providing material support for an act of terrorism, what is your verdict?
Not guilty.
For William Null, count 2, possession of a firearm at the time of the commission or attempted commission of a felony, what is your verdict?
Not guilty.
It was the FBI informants who were working within this group who first brought up the idea to kidnap the governor. The FBI was the one that brought up the idea separately of trying to assassinate the Virginia governor, who was a Democrat at the time. They were the ones who suggested having the surveillance of Gretchen Whitmer's home. They were the ones who suggested having firearms training. I mean, every escalation that occurred in this supposed plot of a radical set of Americans or right-wing extremists or domestic extremists was basically orchestrated by the FBI. And so there was a legitimate defense from the lawyers in this case that their clients were entrapped by the FBI.
Right now, MGM resorts across the nation are under a massive cyber attack. Payment systems are shut down. Guests are locked out of their hotel rooms. At one point, even slot machines at some casinos had gone dark. This all started yesterday, and MGM initially attempting to keep it under wraps, claiming it was routine maintenance. But within hours, the casino brand was forced to admit the disruptions were a much larger issue and could take days to fix. MGM Resorts is the largest property owner and resort operator in Las Vegas, but its reach stretches far beyond the Strip. The outages impacting casino properties in Mississippi, Michigan, Ohio, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, and Massachusetts.
In the past, we've seen both nation states and sort of criminal hackers come after the gaming industry. Back in 2015, we know that Iran went after the Las Vegas Sands Casino, took down their computer systems, and actually bricked actual computer devices there in that attack.
Back in 2020, MGM suffered another massive data breach with the personal data of more than 10 million customers published on hacker forums.
We are now in the third day of what MGM Resorts International is calling a cybersecurity issue, which has affected all 9 of their Las Vegas Strip resorts.
There are many unanswered questions about what happened, such as who or what might be behind the breach, but we do know the FBI is investigating.
Sources tell me they've also been involved with an incursion at Caesars Entertainment. Criminals got into Caesars systems and last week demanded a $30 million ransom. I've learned that Caesars has agreed and is paying half of that. I've confirmed that ransom demands have been made to MGM as well. What they have in common, my sources say, is that the criminals did not hack their way in. A human actually opened the door for them. In both cases, social engineering was used, where criminals target an employee either at the company or at a third-party vendor, and it works.
How did ransom group Black Cat do it? Reputable malware resource VX Underground says the hackers used social engineering tactics, finding a name of an employee on LinkedIn and calling the help desk for information. That simple.
Cybersecurity analysts tell ABC News they believe a ransomware group known as Scattered Spider is responsible for the MGM attack.
They figured out who worked at MGM and they decided to call into the IT help desk and pretend that they were one of the existing employees.
Heavy rains caused flooded streets and basements in parts of Zuid-Limburg on Tuesday evening. Streets came from Maastricht, Geleen, and Valkenburg, according to One Limburg. The train station in Maastricht flooded, as did many cellars, including those at UNC Maastricht. Several schools also sustained water damage.
Alarming new vision shows just how quickly floodwaters overwhelmed the city of Derna in Libya. Empty streets were hit with a rushing wall of water. Within seconds, the deluge was carrying dozens of cars with it.
More than 5,000 people are now feared dead.
The Red Crescent reports that at least 10,000 people are missing.
11,000 people have been killed. Authorities are now under fire for not carrying out basic maintenance that could have prevented a catastrophe of this scale.
Large parts of the coastal city were swept away after torrential rain caused 2 dams to burst. The UN said many of the deaths could have been avoided if Libya had a functioning weather agency. There are concerns about the spread of disease, with many bodies still lying among the ruins.
Mexico holds its first ever hearing on UFOs, with scientists putting on display what they claim are the remains of 2 extraterrestrials.
This is according to a prominent Mexican UFO journalist and researcher. These are 2 non-human corpses, both at least 1,000 years old, discovered in Peru back in 2017 and then fossilized. Now look, there is a lot of skepticism here about whether these are real, whether this is legitimate. We ourselves can't verify any of this, so we are skeptical about what we're seeing here at News Nation when it comes to the origins of these things in this video. Nonetheless, these displays were a part of a legitimate Mexican congressional hearing.
The Biden administration struck a deal with Iran for a prisoner swap.
5 American citizens detained in Iran. In exchange, the U.S. will give Tehran access to $6 billion that had been blocked by U.S. sanctions. As part of that deal, the Biden administration has agreed to release 5 Iranian citizens held in the United States.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken sealed the deal last week, but members of Congress were not notified until Monday, when Americans commemorated 22 years since the 9/11 terrorist attacks. According to the deal, Iran is only permitted to use the unfrozen funds to purchase food, medicine, or other humanitarian items.
Yard in Russian-annexed Crimea is on fire this morning after a suspected Ukrainian attack. 24 people have been injured and 2 ships sustained damage. Russia's defense ministry says Ukraine launched 10 cruise missiles at the Sevastopol shipyard and 3 sea drones at Russian ships in the Black Sea. The military says 7 missiles were shot down and all of the sea drones have been destroyed, but some missiles damaged ships that were being repaired. There's been no comment from Ukrainian officials.
Taiwan detected 39 Chinese warplanes and an aircraft carrier after a U.S. destroyer and a Canadian frigate transited through the Taiwan Strait over the weekend.
Taiwan says China has flown 68 warplanes and deployed 10 Navy vessels around the self-ruled island in just one day. This is being seen as a significant escalation from the previous day, when Taipei said 35 warplanes were detected around the island.
In recent years, Beijing has ratcheted up military and political pressure on Taiwan. It often conducts naval exercises, sends warplanes buzzing overhead to coincide with any diplomatic engagements with Taipei. Between Sunday and Monday morning, 26 aircraft and 13 warships were operating around the island. Another 13 Chinese aircraft were detected since the early hours of Monday, according to Taiwan's defense ministry. China's Shandong carrier was also detected around 60 nautical miles southeast of Taiwan's southernmost tip, sailing eastward and then entering the Western Pacific for training. Taiwan said 22 of the 39 planes it had recently detected crossed the median line of Taiwan Strait, a narrow waterway between the island and China. A few months ago, in fact, Xi Jinping said that China must modernize its military to make it a Great Wall of Steel. She also said that China must oppose pro-independence and secessionist activities and the interference of external forces.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un expressed his support for what he called Moscow's sacred fight against Western imperialism. Earlier, when asked by reporters if Russia would help Kim build satellites, Putin said, quote, "That's why we came here." North Korea failed twice to launch reconnaissance satellites in the past 4 months. Meanwhile, just an hour before the highly anticipated meeting, North Korea launched 2 short-range ballistic missiles, according to South Korean and Japanese authorities. Analysts say it was the first launch by the North while Kim was abroad, and it could imply that Pyongyang is adopting an increasing level of delegation and more refined control systems for its nuclear and missile programs.
Abiy Ahmed made the announcement. Filling of this mega dam, said to be Africa's largest, has been completed. An operation denounced by Egypt that depends on the Nile for 90% of its water needs. It said, Ethiopia's unilateral measures do not take into account the interests and rights of the 2 downstream states nor their water security protected by international law.
Research suggesting a new lithium deposit in northern Nevada may be the largest in the world. It's located next to the Thacker Pass mine, not far from the Nevada-Oregon border. One company planning to begin mining operations in 2026 says there could be 20 to 40 million tons of lithium.
But they cheered when that injury happened. I talked to several people right after that. They said they were not cheering because of the injury, but more so because of the bet they placed in being here.
Snap, it's a short punt.
People are thinking like, oh, they're just bitter that Rogers left. And it's like, no, we're just capitalizing on the market.
They're offering to pay the drink tabs of their customers with conditions for every game the Jets lose when Aaron Rodgers starts at quarterback.
The mood has changed considerably. That is because the Jets just won the game on a long touchdown in overtime. You could take a look. This is the reaction from a bar where people are realizing the bar tabs they've been racking up all night, thinking, certainly with Rodgers hurt, the bar was going to be paying that tab. It is setting in. They are going to have to go to the bar and pay that tab. That's where we're at.